about witchcraft were just stories that we told the lower people. And where I thought there was only 3 levels and I was as high and as powerful as a witch could go, he assured me there were 3 more. I guess I should have backed off then, figured if I was lied to the first time, maybe I'd be lied to the second time. But as I said, witches have an incurable curiosity. They've got to find out everything. So I let him train me. He explained to me that since I was a male Collins, I was in the Collins family, that I had a position to take. And that there was a board of directors called the Grand Druid Council, which contained 13 of the most powerful witches in the world. And that my place was on that council. And I said, oh, great. When do I take it? And he said, well, somebody just died. I kind of always wondered if he died or they shot him or something. You never can tell in the Illuminati. But he sent me to Los Angeles. I studied for 6 more months with my foster mother, holding kind of a temporary rank on this council, and then taking up to Colorado Springs and initiated. And I do believe that when I testified here at the last time, I explained who the person was that handed me the ceremonial night for that ceremony. Another senator named George McGovern. You might, before the night gets over, start to realize that Washington isn't bad as you thought it was. It's worse. But the ceremony, by the way, was human sacrifice. And the leader of that ceremony that night was George McGovern. That's why when we did the broken cross, we drew his picture into the broken cross as a person practicing human sacrifice. But after the ceremony, I went down to San Antonio and decided that would be the perfect place. And I moved into San Antonio to watch all the drug traffic in the area, and I was given a 13-state area. That totaled out to about 65,000 initiated witches and wizards, priests and priestesses. Now that's just the staff of the church. That's not the congregation. So if there's that many ministers in that area, you can imagine what the population is. In California, whereas most of the Grand Druids have many states like I did, I had 13, California has a Grand Druid all to itself because there's that many witches in California. In fact, it's the most populated area in the world for witchcraft. And the Bay Area just happens to have the most. But anyway, this is where I lived. I only left it 8 times a year to attend what we called council meetings. Now, to give you an idea, Monday was one of those council meetings. They hold them 8 times a year. May 1st, they held a council meeting, and from our information, they held it in San Francisco. So you were kind of close to it this time. Things went along fine. I enjoyed the money, par. I always thought they were kind of weird because they kept talking about controlling the world. And I thought, let's stay back with witchcraft, this world government thing, they're a little weird. Witches are never going to control the world. And finally, on August the 1st, 1972, things changed. Courier from the London Embassy, a member of our United States State Department, arrived with a courier document pouch sealed with the crest of the State Department, brought it through customs, unopened, nobody could touch it, brought it in to San Antonio, and I was hosting the meeting this time. And it was on Latimus, August the 1st. The man came in, laid the pouch down in the temple room up in the casino building, walked out, and left it. He wasn't to know what was in it. The door was locked, security guards were placed on the outside, and Dr. Buckland took up what's called the Atam, the witch's ceremonial night. He slid open the seal, unlocked everything, and took out 6 letters. We'd seen letters like this before, no big deal. They had the crest of the Illuminati, which is on the back of your $1 bill, so you can look at it later. On them, sealed in wax, red wax. The only problem was that the first 4 were standard business. They only contained checks, bribe checks and so on. Usually bribe checks start at about $500,000 to give you kind of an idea and work up into the millions. But then they've got almost all the money in the world. Why should they worry? You spend a $5 bill and you panic. For what a $5 bill feels like to you, $1 million feels like to them. So believe me, they've got the financial strength to do it. The 5th one was totally different. It's very thick, about 30 pages, and it was handwritten. Now, according to the laws of witchcraft, if anything is religious, it must be written in a special ink with a dip pen, and the person who's writing it own handwriting. Nobody, you don't dictate it. It doesn't get typed up. Nobody writes it for you. Now, in the Illuminati, the Rothschilds are not humans. They're not just the richest family in the world. They are gods in human bodies. More or less the counterfeit of what Jesus Christ was when he was on the earth. They're the sons and daughters of Lucifer in human body, and his wife and so on. So that this council that I was on is the private priesthood of those gods. And when those gods talk, the priests listen and the priestesses listen, then they tell political people. That's why a handful of witches have so much power over so many political people, because they're simply just like a tape recorder for some very powerful people that everybody else considers to be holy and to be gods. So we opened this one in Philip Rothschild's handwriting, and it would have been the same to, well, it was like, you know, the gods sent their own private message. So we opened it up. Dr. Buckland started reading it. It's a chart. A friend of mine, Dr. Tom Berry, has placed that chart in a 30-page book, and we're proofing it now, and Dr. Stuart Crane is going to publish it, and we hope to have it in Christians' hands in about 3 months. It's a step-by-step plan beginning in 1973 at the first of the year to the end of 1980 to take over the world by taking over the United States. Now, before you think that that's impossible, I've watched the news over the past 5.5 years, and they're not only on schedule, they're a year ahead of schedule. And when I told people this 5 years ago, they thought I was crazy, like a lot of people think now. When I told them that we were supposedly not going to have any fuel, although we were going to have it, and that the gasoline prices were going to go sky high, I even told them a crazy story that the farmers were going to go on strike and the coal mines were going to close down. Now, I wonder where I could have gotten a crazy idea like that. And I was saying it 5 years ago. Only when I went on the East Coast this time, nobody was laughing because they were getting cut back on electricity and people were only working 20 hours a week because there wasn't any coal. So after reading this, I thought, these people are really crazy. You know, crazier and crazier. But I stopped laughing when I read the 6th letter. It was in Philip Rothschild's handwriting too. Now before I tell you what's in it, I want to say something. The Mormon doctrine and the witchcraft doctrine are almost identical in how the world began. According to the witches, Lucifer chose his son and his daughter, which were married, to come to the world and lead the rest of his little kids down here. Believe it or not, you're supposed to have landed in a flying saucer. And they landed here, and man was just more or less assuming their shape from apes, and they intermarried with man, and that's how, well, the original people were the witches that arrived, and their children became the witches, and the ones that they didn't marry with are the mortals. If you remember Bewitched, you remember the doctrine of witches and mortals. Now, that may seem a little crazy to you, but they firmly believe it. And that Adam, who had the ability to turn back into other lives again, like everybody else did not. Because when the evilness of man settled into the garden, and that's why the garden was bad, there's no original sin according to witches. And Lucifer had planned to come and live on this world along with his children, but he couldn't because of all the evilness of man. And when they say that, I almost feel like they want to write Christians sometimes, the way the doctrine goes. But Adam would come back to bring peace to the world and to unpollute it so his father could come back. Now that's their doctrine. And when the 6th letter said, we have found Adam to be in the world, and he is ready to make peace so that his father can return, I knew enough about revelations in the Christian Bible to say, hey, I'm in the wrong camp. And I asked a very stupid question at that moment. I said, isn't this in the Christian Bible? Now, witches teach that the Christian Bible is an absolute lie, created by the god of evil named Jesus. Okay? So when I asked that, I almost got lynched. Sometimes more or less like the Christians like to do when I'm 2 hours late. I gotta get you to laugh somehow. So I said, well, you know, I'm just kidding. Don't worry about it. I was just joking, trying to lighten things up, make calm down. I left, did some more drugs. Now, I was doing about $150 a day worth of crystal speed at the time. I weighed about 149 pounds, and after looking at some of my rock friends like David Crosby that's doing $200 a day worth of drugs now, I firmly believe that if the Lord hadn't saved me, I probably wouldn't have made it another year. At that time, From August the 1st on, for the next 30 days, I thought of nothing but how to get out. But even though I realized that the Christian Bible was telling the truth, it just never dawned on me because of the spirits inside me that if it was telling the truth in that, then salvation and Calvary were real also. So I went on trying to think of a dozen places I could go hide in this world and marking every one off that they'd find me any place I'd go. And deciding that since, if I died, I'd just come back in another life, and that wouldn't be too good if they were running the world, so what was I going to do? Finally, God, Lord Jesus Christ, I want to say that because I come from a world that Lucifer has been God too. Finally, the Lord Jesus Christ started moving for this, the best way I know how to put it. I don't believe in accidents. I don't believe that my salvation or anybody else's salvation was an accident. I believe in God infinite. I believe that God sets in motion the things to bring you about. You still have the choice. But many of you who don't know him tonight, the Lord brought you here whether you know it or not. Much of you were probably brought here by praying friends and relatives. A man found his daughter, a pastor by the name of Smith, found his daughter, an initiated witch, shortly thereafter, he told me later, he said, I couldn't believe it. Here I was, I went to Baylor University, I was a minister in the Southern Baptist Church, and Baylor did everything but hit me over the head that there was no devil and no witches